Howdy folks, and welcome to another episode of Mingles with Jingles. And at the risk of putting you all to sleep right at the start of this week's episode, what I wanted to start off talking about this week is the whole issue of net neutrality. You may be aware that there's a bit of a fuss happening over in the USA about this whole net neutrality thing, even if you don't know what net neutrality is. Like me, you may have been thinking, well, what do I care? I mean, how can it possibly affect me? I'm not American. I'm British, I'm French, I'm German, I'm Italian, I'm Bulgarian, I'm Argentinian. I'm not American. How does America regulate and how American internet service providers provide their service affect me as a Briton, a Frenchman, a German, an Italian, an Argentinian, a Bulgarian, whatever? And that's a very, very good question. And I'm going to answer it in this week's episode of Mingles with Jingles. First of all, I suppose we have to understand exactly what net neutrality is in the first place. At the moment, internet service providers in the USA are treated like basic utility providers, like, for example, the people who provide your water. They're regulated by the government, and what they cannot do is, for example, offer a bunch of different packages for the water that they provide to your home, where you pay the basic rate, for example, and you get pretty dirty water, not really fit for human consumption. But if you pay them a premium price, they'll guarantee you clean water. They can't do that because they're public utilities. Unlike, for example, cable TV providers. I can remember when Sky Television was first introduced, the satellite TV service, into the UK. Pretty soon you saw these satellite dishes sprouting up on everybody's houses because the service that they offered really was very, very good. For one price, you got Sky Sports, Sky Movies, Sky 1, 2, 3, a whole bunch of different channels. And so, of course, anybody who could afford it signed up for it. Yes, no, it really used to be like that. I realise most of you are right now just having a look at your cable TV bill and thinking, seriously? You used to get everything for one monthly fee? Well, yes, you did. Of course, it didn't take long for Sky and all of the other satellite and cable TV providers to realise that they could screw more money out of people if they started slicing their service up into various different packages. The first casualty, of course, was Sky Sports, which became a separate subscription. You had to start paying an additional fee every month to get everything that you used to get as part of your Sky subscription anyway. Now, you might think that in a free market, any TV provider who turned around to you and said, we realise that at the moment you pay $20 a month for everything, but next month you can continue paying $20 a month, but you won't get sports anymore. And if you want to get sports in future, you're going to have to pay us an additional $10 a month. So $30 a month next month to get everything that you're currently receiving for $20 a month. Surely at that point, people would vote with their feet and leave. Surely a competing cable or satellite TV provider would see the opportunity and make a big fuss about the fact that they weren't going to do that and take all of your customers. And in an actual free market, that's what would have happened. But what did happen is that all of the companies sat down around the table together before announcing these new bundles and said, look, if we work together, we can all make a lot more money. And they carved everything up between them so that there was no alternative. And basically everybody was screwed, and they were able to do that because the market wasn't regulated in the same way that essential utilities are. Now at the moment, in the USA, internet service providers are regulated and they are treated like public utilities. So they can't pull shit like that on you. But next month, that may change. Because on the 14th of December, the Federal Communications Commission is voting to decide whether or not internet service providers should follow the same rules as other public utilities. And if they decide no, how is that going to affect you and me, regardless of whether we live in the USA or not? Well, if you live in the USA, you're fucked. It's just, yeah. Now, Americans are kind of used to getting screwed by their ISPs. For a long time now, they have been paying more and receiving a worse service than anywhere else in the world. And the reason for that is because the internet service providers in America, all the big cable and satellite communications companies like Verizon, Time Warner, Comcast, They got together just like the cable TV companies and decided that they weren't going to compete with each other, and instead they were going to carve up huge sections of American territory where they would be the only meaningful choice when it came to signing up for an internet service provider. For example, if you live on 22nd Street in the Chelsea section of Manhattan, you've only got one internet service provider. You have to sign up for the artist formerly known as Time Warner Cable, now goes by the name of Spectrum. That's it, that's your only choice. Which means, of course, Spectrum don't have to offer you a competitive service. They can charge as much as they want and give as shitty a service as they want because there is no actual competition. They effectively have a monopoly. A couple of years ago, Time Warner struck a deal with Comcast where they merged and created an ISP that served 40% of Americans in 19 of the 20 biggest markets with virtually no rivals. They've basically been creating effective monopolies by carving out huge sections of American communications territory where they become the only effective choice. So they can charge whatever they want, and there's no real incentive for them to provide any kind of decent service. And the only thing that's been protecting the average American internet user is the fact that up until now these companies have been classified as utility providers and so have been forced to provide an at least adequate level of service for the same price across the board, regardless of who you are or where you live. And that can all change on the 14th of December, depending on the outcome of the FCC's vote. Well, alright Jingles, said 60 to 70% of everybody watching this video, but I'm not American. I don't pay an American internet service provider. I live in Romania, for example. We've got the best internet in the world. Cheapest too. How is this possibly going to affect me? Hold on. I'm going to get to that. So, let's just assume, for the sake of argument, that the worst comes to the worst and this whole net neutrality thing gets scrapped when the FCC votes on the 14th of December. What is going to happen? Well, I can state with a fairly large degree of confidence that if you're American at least, you're going to start paying more for the same shitty level of service as you're currently, and I use the word in the broadest possible sense of the word, enjoying at the hands of the internet service providers. How can you say this, Jingles? Well, we've seen it happen before with the cable TV companies. You will, of course, have the option, the freedom, if you like, because it's all about that freedom. You will, of course, enjoy the freedom of paying them yet more still to guarantee a minimum effective level of service, or to guarantee improved access to certain popular sites like Netflix and Amazon, for example. How can you say this, Jingles? What are you, some kind of market analyst? Well, like I said, we've seen this happen before with the cable TV companies. And we've seen it happen before with the internet service providers as well. What are you talking about, Jingles? They're not voting until the 14th of December. How can we have seen this before if net neutrality is up until now enshrined in American law? Well, it's a funny old thing. But a couple of years back, in 2014, customers of Comcast, the ISP, who were signed up for Netflix, began to notice declining levels of service when they were trying to watch movies or TV shows or whatever on Netflix, the popular video streaming service. It was almost as if Comcast was deliberately throttling the level of service they were providing their customers while accessing the Netflix site. After months and months of declining performance, Netflix and Comcast announced a deal where Netflix would pay Comcast for something that was called a paid peering arrangement on Comcast's network, which would guarantee a minimal acceptable level of service for any of Comcast's customers who were trying to watch streaming video from Netflix. Now, I'm certainly not suggesting that Comcast deliberately and illegally throttled the connections of all of their customers who were trying to watch movies and TV shows on Netflix, so that after months of declining performance, Netflix would be forced to come to the negotiating table with Comcast and pay them a large sum of money to guarantee that all of Netflix's customers who were accessing the internet via Comcast would be able to enjoy an uninterrupted level of service. That would, of course, be completely illegal. Under the terms of net neutrality, they wouldn't be allowed to do that. I'm sure it was just a complete coincidence that anybody who was signed up for Comcast was having problems watching Netflix. And Netflix, out of the goodness of their heart, decided to start paying Comcast a lot of money to ensure that their customers were able to watch their movies and TV shows uninterrupted. But, massive coincidence aside, in the absence of net neutrality, that is exactly what all of the ISPs will be completely legally free to do. And so, of course, that is exactly what will happen. Yeah, but I still don't see how this affects me, Jingles. I'm not American, said 70% of the people watching this video. Do you watch Netflix? Do you watch streaming video on Amazon Prime? Do you use Instagram, Reddit, Snapchat, Facebook, Google, YouTube, Skype, Discord? Netflix isn't special. There's nothing to stop any of the big American ISPs. Well, there is at the moment, but after the 14th of December there might not be. Anything to stop any of the big American ISPs from signing deals with any of these sites or apps for preferred access for their customers. Equally, flip that on its head, there will also be nothing to stop these big American ISPs from cutting off access to any of these sites or apps that haven't signed deals with them. So, for example, the guy that you like to platoon up with regularly in World of Tanks has Skype, and so do you. But he's signed up to Comcast and you're signed up to Verizon, and Comcast has struck a deal with Skype that basically gives them exclusive access. So you suddenly can't talk to him on Skype anymore. Well, alright, that's a pain in the arse, but we'll just download and install TeamSpeak. Ah, but TeamSpeak has signed a deal with Verizon, and he's a Comcast customer. So you're fucked coming and you're fucked going. And all of these free communications apps, like TeamSpeak, like Skype, like Discord, how long do you think they're going to stay free if the various companies that make these apps are forced to start striking deals with the ISPs to ensure that the people that use the apps get a decent level of service? And who's going to be paying for this, by the way? Because, funnily enough, not long after Comcast and Netflix announced this paid peering arrangement in order to guarantee Comcast's customers a decent level of service on Netflix, Netflix announced that the price of a basic Netflix package in the USA was going to be raised by $2 a month. So these big companies strike these deals and money changes hands, but the money is actually coming out of our pockets. And companies like Netflix, like Amazon, to name but two, they may be American companies, but they have global reach. They have customers all across the world. And if they're having to pay more money to guarantee acceptable levels of service in the USA, that money is going to be coming from the pockets of their customers all across the world as prices go up everywhere. So it doesn't really matter whether we live in the USA or not. Net neutrality is going to affect us all. So what, if anything, can be done about this? Well, if you're American, you can always write to your congressman, or you can email your congressman. Of course, writing to your congressman is going to cost you the price of a postage stamp. Email is, of course, free, or at least it is for the next 3 weeks. After that, who knows? If you're not American, yeah, we can't do a thing about it. We just have to wait and see. Once again, the rest of the world is being held to ransom to the whims of an American federal agency. I'm starting to get really sick of this. But that's the world we live in, I'm afraid. For better or for worse. And usually for worse. Well, anyway, while we're on the subject of blatant cash grabs, we're going to combine this with another subject that's always been close to my heart. World of Tanks and the Chieftain tank. Now, you're probably aware that the model for the Chieftain tank has been in World of Tanks PC for donkey's years. It's been around since forever. And yet we don't actually have the Chieftain tank on World of Tanks PC. They've got the Chieftain on World of Tanks console, Xbox and PS4 players. They've got the Chieftain in their tech tree. Instead, we've been saddled with the Super Conqueror, also known as the Conqueror range target. Well, that's not terribly fair to the Super Conqueror. It's a pretty good tank, but it's not a Chieftain, so, you know, I want a Chieftain, damn it. But unfortunately, as a World of Tanks PC player, no Chieftain for me. Unless you play World of Tanks on the Chinese server. Now, before we go any further, I need to make it abundantly clear that wargaming do not run World of Tanks on the Chinese server. The Chinese government doesn't allow that sort of thing. Big Western games that operate in China, World of Warcraft is another example, it's not run by Blizzard in China, and World of Tanks is not run by Wargaming in China. Instead, it kind of operates like a franchise, and Chinese companies operate these games in China for the Western owners. Other than collecting money at the end of the month, the owners of the games have nothing whatsoever to do with how these games are run in the Chinese territories. So, much as you might like to, what I'm about to tell you, you can't actually blame wargaming for, okay? Okay. So, unusual things for sale for real money on the Chinese server are not exactly something new. You've always been able to buy the Type 59, for example, on the Chinese server, and for a very reasonable price as well. I think it costs around about 20 euros. You see, this is the weird thing about the Chinese server, because it kind of goes from one extreme to the other. We're used to paying a lot of money for a Tier 8 premium, for example. Prices range from 35 to 50 euros, depending on the premium that you want to buy. But on the Chinese server, the prices for Tier 8 premiums are very, very cheap. They're very competitive. A Tier 8 premium on the Chinese server will cost you anything between 10 and 20 euros. That's a fraction of the price that we pay here. Of course, there are some exceptions. There's the infamous Type 59G, which is a Type 59, except it's made out of gold. And it used to cost something in the region of 500 euros or $600. These days you can get the Type 59G Tier 8 Premium Chinese medium tank for the rock bottom knockdown price of a mere 160 euros. Why the change in price, Jingles? Well, I can't be sure, but I suspect it's because they're trying to encourage more people to buy it. Because what's historically happened, anybody who'd paid 500 euros for one of these tanks and rocked up for a battle in the Type 59G, the second the countdown timer ended at the start of the game, everybody just turned around and team killed him. Not that that's funny, of course, oh no. And I'm certainly not encouraging that kind of thing. No. It's not the only expensive Tier 8 Premium on the Chinese server. And when I say expensive here, I'm talking about the same price as a Tier 8 Premium everywhere else. There's another one that they call the Alpine Tiger, or the WZ111T, depending on who you're asking. This thing will cost you 40 euros, which is about the price of a Tier 8 Premium on the EU server. But this thing earns double experience. It's a Tier 8 heavy with a 122mm gun that gets 300mm of penetration with its premium ammunition. And of course, if you bought one of these things, you fire nothing but premium ammunition. So it can basically penetrate the front of everything that it's going to face in battle. It's the ultimate pay-to-win tank. We think we've seen some pay-to-win tanks on the EU and North American servers, and we have, but we've seen nothing compared to what they offer for sale on the Chinese server. And nobody makes a fuss about this tank, because nobody really cares about Tier 8 premiums on the Chinese server. Now, the big money on the Chinese server is made from selling, wait for it, Tier 10 premiums. Yes, really. If you thought that Clueless Joe in his lurver, who's never played a game of World of Tanks in his life, and then suddenly turns up in your Tier 8, 9 and 10 battles in his Tier 8 Premium Heavy without clue number 1 was bad, just imagine what it's like on the Chinese server when every Tier 10 battle consists of nothing but people playing Tier 10 Premium tanks that they've paid 140 euros for. Tier 10 premiums like the Object 257 Soviet Tier 10 heavy tank. It has the gun of the Object 260 and better armour than the T-22, yours for a mere 150 euros. Or if that doesn't tickle your fancy, how about a premium Tier 10 Soviet tank destroyer like the Object 268 version 5? It has a 152mm gun with base penetration of 303mm, or if you're prepared to put your hand even further into your pocket, 395mm of penetration with premium ammunition. It can be yours also for a mere 150 euros. If there's a tank that has ever been available for sale in World of Tanks, anywhere in the world, it is available for sale on the Chinese server. The Waffenträger E100, I know they still get it on console, but you don't get it on PC anymore, unless you're playing World of Tanks on the Chinese server. It's available as a Tier 10 Premium. As is the Chieftain Mark 6 Tier 10 British Heavy Tank. If you want to play it on PC, you need to be playing on the Chinese server. You also need to part with 1,300 euros for the privilege. No, I'm not making this up. It is the most expensive tank in World of Tanks anywhere. For now, at least. 1,300 euros. I like the Chieftain, but I don't like it that much. I've got better things to spend 1,300 euros on. It is a bloody nice tank, though. I was looking at a screenshot of somebody who has one in his garage on the Chinese server. Now, he's running premium consumables, he's got gun rammer, he's got improved ventilation, his crew all have brothers in arms. 3,677 damage per minute with a 400 average damage gun that has 270mm of penetration with standard ammunition. A 0.28 accuracy. That's just ridiculous. And a 1.32 second aiming time. It is absurdly good. It's doing 400 damage every 6.5 seconds. And with 0.28 accuracy and a 1.32 second aiming time, coupled with 270mm of penetration, and that's with the standard ammunition. With the premium ammunition, it's going to be more than 300. It will be doing 400 damage every 6.5 seconds. It's a bloody nice tank. I'm not sure if it's 1,300 euros bloody good, but it's a nice tank. Why can't we have it on PC? It doesn't have to be that good. I mean, we do have it on PC, we just can't get it. It's there in the game files, it's been there for years. Wargaming, come on. Enough of the Super Conqueror shit. We want the Chieftain. We really, really want the Chieftain. Just make it as good as it is on console. I mean, that would be enough. Because it's very nice on console as well. Come on, guys. What do we want? The Chieftain. When do we want it? Well, you know, whenever you're ready. I mean, I don't want to be too pushy here. Seriously, though, why do we not have the Chieftain in World of Tanks PC? I mean, outside of China, because there just don't appear to be any rules on the Chinese server. The company that runs World of Tanks in China, and again, you know, it's not wargaming, I do need to stress this, the company that runs World of Tanks for wargaming in China only really appear to care about however much money they can squeeze out of their customers every month. Of course, every company only really cares about how much money they can squeeze out of their customers every month, but unless you're Electronic Arts, most Western companies do at least try to project the illusion that they actually give a shit about their customers' game experience rather than just how much money they can squeeze out of them. Not so apparently in China. They're a lot more honest about it over there. But they've got the Chieftain and we don't, and I cannot figure out why. And don't give me that historical accuracy bullshit. Don't tell me that the Chieftain as is would be too strong to have as a tier 10 heavy tank in World of Tanks PC. You can't play the historical accuracy card in a game that includes Chinese tank destroyers, okay? It's not going to wash, sorry. You know, it wouldn't surprise me if they were saving the Chieftain for something special. Because let's face it, I would not be at all surprised to see the Chieftain appear as a mission reward tank. Something that you had to complete a very, very long and grueling campaign in order to unlock as a tier 10 premium, a lot like the T-22 for example. Because let's face it, you know, love it or not, the Chieftain is the #1 tank on a lot of people's I want this tank wish list, mine included. Because it's pretty clear at this point that we're never going to see the Chieftain in the tech tree. They had the opportunity to do it before they introduced the FV215B. They didn't. They said they were going to, but they didn't. They had the opportunity to do it again, but instead they gave us the Super Conqueror range target. So if we're ever going to see the Chieftain in World of Tanks PC outside of the Chinese server, it's probably going to be a prize for a mission marathon. Something special, something that's going to take a lot of time and effort to unlock. And that makes me kind of sad, because I just don't really invest that kind of time in World of Tanks anymore. Still, if I want my Chieftain fix, there's always Armoured Warfare and War Thunder. That'll have to do. And that's about it for this week's episode of Mingles with Jingles. Just one other thing that I needed to mention. There will not be an episode of Mingles with Jingles next week. Next Monday will be a Jingles video-free day. Because next week, on Sunday, I have to endure a Phil Collins concert. It's Rita's Christmas present. Phil Collins is doing his, what's probably going to be his final tour. He's calling it the I'm Not Dead Yet tour. And she's never seen Phil Collins, and she's a massive fan. And so that's her Christmas present. I'm taking her to Birmingham to watch Phil Collins. We'll be there all Sunday. We'll be coming back Monday. I just won't have time to do an episode of Mingles with Jingles. So this is the last Mingles with Jingles until 2 weeks from now. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you had a good weekend. And as always, take care. And I'll catch you next time.